You've spent years building a house. You picked out the tiles, you know exactly which floorboards creak, and you felt safe within those walls through every storm. Then, one afternoon, you walk through the front door and realize the entire foundation's been replaced with tissue paper. The walls are still there, the pictures are still hanging, but the ground beneath you is simply gone. That is the grit of betrayal. When someone asks, why does cheating hurt so much? The surface answer is obvious, because it's mean. But that doesn't explain the physical nausea, the loss of identity, or why your brain suddenly feels like it's been put through a wood chipper. You aren't just mourning a relationship, you're experiencing a literal neurological emergency. The truth is, your brain doesn't process a broken heart as a sad event, it processes it as a threat to your very survival. Here's the first thing you need to know. Your brain is a bit of a literalist. It doesn't really distinguish between a broken heart and a broken leg. When researchers at Columbia University put people who had recently been betrayed into an MRI machine and showed them photos of their ex, the results were startling. And the areas of the brain that lit up weren't just the sadness centers. They were the secondary somatosensory cortex and the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. In plain English, those are the exact same regions that fire when you burn your hand on a stove or break a bone. Your brain uses the same neural circuitry for social pain as it does for physical pain. This is why you feel that little ache in your chest and that hollow feeling in your stomach. You aren't being dramatic. Your body is sending out a high-level pain signal because evolutionarily, being cast out by your partner was as dangerous as a physical wound. The reason cheating feels so much worse than a normal breakup is the retrospective reality distortion. When you break up because you grew apart, your memories of the past remain intact. But when you find out there was a third person involved, your entire history is rewritten without your consent. You look back at your birthday party 3 months ago and think, was that smile real? Were they texting them while I was blowing out the candles? Psychologically, this is called cognitive dissonance. You hold two conflicting versions of reality in your head. The one where you were loved and safe, and the one where you were being deceived. This causes a system error in the brain. Because you can no longer trust your past, you lose your ability to trust your current perception. You aren't just losing a partner, you're losing your confidence in your own ability to tell what is real. This makes you feel gaslit by your own memories, which is a uniquely exhausting kind of mental torture. To your ancient brain, your partner isn't just a person you hang out with. They are your primary attachment figure. We're biologically hardwired to pair bond for safety. When that bond is threatened by a third party, it triggers what psychologists call attachment anxiety. It's the same panic a toddler feels when they lose sight of their parent in a crowded mall. This triggers a massive spike in cortisol and adrenaline. You go into fight or flight mode, but there's no tiger to fight and nowhere to fly. This is why people who have been cheated on often experience intrusive thoughts, those mental loops where you imagine the details of the betrayal over and over. Your brain is trying to study the threat so it never happens again, but in doing so, it keeps the stress response stuck in the on position. Your nervous system is basically stuck on a 24/7 high alert patrol, looking for a ghost. Now, we often define ourselves through the eyes of the people we love. In a long-term relationship, yourself and them start to overlap in the brain, a concept known as self-expansion. So when someone cheats, they aren't just rejecting the relationship, they're rejecting the version of you that existed within it. This often leads to the most painful question. Why wasn't I enough? The truth is, cheating is almost never a rating of the partner who's betrayed. It's usually a reflection of the cheater's own internal gaps, a need for validation, a fear of aging, or an inability to handle conflict. But because our brains are designed to find patterns, we internalize the betrayal as a personal failure. We treat a breach of contract as a loss of value. We start to audit ourselves, looking for the flaw that caused the leak, when in reality, the pipe was just broken on their end. And finally, there is the social displacement aspect. In our culture, there is a weird lingering stigma around being the person who was cheated on. We feel a sense of shame, as if we should have known, or as if our failure to keep our partner's attention is something to be embarrassed about. This shame prevents us from seeking the social support we desperately need. While people will bring you soup if you have the flu or flowers if you lose a job, people often don't know what to say when your heart has been hijacked. This isolation makes the neurochemical withdrawal of the breakup even more intense. It's like being forced to go through drug withdrawal while everyone pretends you just have a mild headache. So the damage of cheating doesn't just stop at the partner, it shatters your trust schema, the mental map that you use to navigate all people. Once you've been deeply deceived by the person who knew you best, your brain starts to apply the deception template to everyone else. You might find yourself questioning the motives of friends, family, or potential future partners. This is known as generalization. Your brain is trying to protect you by assuming everyone is a potential threat. It takes a massive amount of cognitive energy to relearn that most people are actually reliable. You're essentially forced to walk through the world without skin for a while, where every social interaction feels raw and potentially dangerous. This is why moving on isn't just about finding someone new, it's about rebuilding the concept of safety itself. Now, if you're going through this right now, the most important thing to understand is that your brain is currently malfunctioning by design. You are in a state of biological shock. So, to help this, stop the investigation. Searching for more details is like picking a scab to see how deep the wound is. Your brain thinks it needs data to feel safe, but more data only feeds the trauma loop. Then separate action from value. Remind yourself, literally, out loud, that their choice was a reflection of their character, not a grade on your own worth. Then ground the physical. Since your brain is processing this as physical pain, treat it as that way. Sleep, hydration, and movement aren't self-care cliches, they are the first aid that your nervous system needs to lower its alarm state. And finally, limit the reruns. When you catch yourself in a loop of what if or why, try to physically change your environment. Stand up, walk into another room, or touch something cold. You need to snap your brain out of it in its internal movie theater. The truth is that cheating hurts so badly because it hits every single one of our human pressure points. Our need for truth, our need for safety, and our need for belonging. But here's the silver lining of the shattered mirror. Once the old, distorted version of your reality is gone, you eventually get to build a new one. One that's based on your own strength, rather than someone else's honesty. It's a slow, painful process, but your brain is capable of rewiring. You'll feel solid again. You aren't broken. You're in the middle of a very difficult renovation. So if this helped you understand the why behind the brain and the pain, give the video a like. It helps us reach more people who might be sitting in that shattered house right now. And tell me in the comments, how did you find your ground again after a major betrayal? Your story might be the floorboard that someone else needs to stand on. See you in the next one.